And we're live. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome to our author chat with the lovely Rachel Griffin right down here.
Hello.
We are going to be discussing our group book, The Nature of Witches, and such a good book and such a lovely author here. My very first question is this you?
No, that is not me. It actually, the cover came about in this really cool way because I do like Pinterest mood boards for my projects when I'm working on them. I'm really visually inspired by things. And that was actually an image from a photographer I found that happened to be on my Pinterest board. And I had sent that board to my publisher just as like here are the vibes of the book. And they loved that image so much that they reached out to the photographer to see if we could license it for the cover.
Oh, that's
cool. So that's what we did. And it just turned out to be the most beautiful cover. It's, the book's been out for over a year now, and I remain completely obsessed with it.
Yes. And
also stunning.
Yes.
This is by far the most beautiful book inside and outside that we have done for SeasonAthon to date.
I am so happy to hear that. When that case design, I had no idea they were doing something like that, and they just emailed me and they were like, hey, here's a picture of the case. And I guess I thought that was end papers, like the end pages of the book. I just had never seen a case like that before. And when they're like, no, this is the case, I screamed in my office. I just love it so much. I just think it's the most beautiful book. They just did such a fantastic job.
It really is stunning. And yeah, I remember when Clint first got his because, like he said, he pre-ordered it, and he was like, "I had no idea it was going to be this beautiful."
Yeah, I was like unboxing it, and I was just like, what? I was like, stunning.
I know.
Like when books should have the above and beyond aspects to them, where it's like you can. Cause I feel like owning books and having books in your collection is a whole different experience than just reading books. And so having books like that you can open up and just feel joy just looking at them is always so much fun.
Totally. I completely agree. I really lucked out with my team. They just really were like, we are going to make the entire package of this book beautiful. And it's a stunning, stunning book. I feel very lucky that it's mine.
Yes. It does It does give you witch vibes. It's like when you take the cover off, to me it looks like it's a textbook for witches. It's kind of like about learning the seasons and going through the different plants and the animals and stuff like that. That's what I would expect if I just sold this on the thing. Or it would be a book of shadows for someone to write their own journey in it. And I think that's what I loved about it.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. We've actually had readers ask me, hey, can I get that print on a notebook? Or I would love to have this as a journal for myself. And I don't know how to do that, but it's a really cool thing to be asked.
I had fun trying to find a background for the thumbnail that would go with this book. And it was cool because the one I ended up getting, I ended up having the book up in front of the sun, because the sun was coming through trees, and it had these rays that seemed to be matching what is on the book.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
We have a lot of comments here. Let's see. Hope says, hello. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish the book in time, but I'm 45% in and really enjoying it. I'll probably watch back the live once I finish the book so I don't spoil myself.
Good idea.
Thank you, Hope. I hope you enjoy the rest of it.
Hello, y'all. I haven't read the book yet. I'm waiting for my library to get it in. Well, hopefully they'll get it in soon for you.
Thank you.
The Nature of Witches is amazing. 6 out of 5 stars.
Yay! Thank you.
And hi. Hello. I just finished the book last night, and oh my God.
Listen, Tori, I finished it right before this and came in crying. So I get it.
seasonal/elemental witchery is my jam.
Mine too.
I found it to be like so interesting how you incorporate. It was like two stories really going on here with all the climate change as well as the witches story and all of that. And I loved how like it was just part of it, like all of the witching stuff, like the elemental witches, all that was completely legit and real, and they're controlling the weather and all of that stuff, but trying to overcome what we as shades do to the planet, and trying to fix that, but also saying, hey guys, stop screwing it up. We can only do so much.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting to see how you like tied it all together.
Thank you. It didn't actually start that way, funnily enough. I mean, the first draft of this book is so completely different from the finished version of the book. Like, the first draft did not even have witches. It was not a witch book. And it just really evolved as I was revising it. But basically, once I decided that I wanted there to be witches in the book and I wanted their magic to be tied to all 4 seasons, the book was just like, when I was revising it, I realized I had basically just written a love letter to the earth. I love the natural world. I feel very relaxed and calm outdoors. Nature is very soothing to me. And I realized I just poured all of my love and adoration for the natural world into this book. But I thought, if we're going to talk about all of the beauty and all of the awe of the natural world, it doesn't make sense to also not acknowledge that the pain that the world is in, right? That there is a climate crisis happening, and it didn't feel right to not acknowledge that. And so it was a very natural progression of what was happening in the world, that if you did have witches who had this kind of power over the elements, there would also be a certain subset of people who wanted to push that power farther than it was ever meant to go. And that at some point the earth was going to start pushing back. And that's when we enter this story.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to add, just so nobody thinks anything, that when I said the witches being real, I know there are witches. Clint is also one. So I'm not saying I don't believe in witches being real.
Druid, technically.
Yeah,
but
just saying that the witches in this story, with the powers they have and all of that.
I would say the one thing that was a constant for me every time I would, this is my second reread, as you know, I told you that, but even like going through a reread process again and talking to every person that has read this book or in the process of reading this book, everyone said the same thing, and that is the writing is impeccable. Like, it just felt so atmospheric. You felt like you were in the story, and it was like, I was telling somebody yesterday, I had a live stream, and I was like, it feels like when you read this book that you're just like floating away with the seasons, and you're like in each emotion that the character's in. And somebody said like it was like Colors of the Wind, Pocahontas, like that's how they emoted that, like floating through the wind.
Yeah.
And it just feels very like authentic, and like you didn't, I mean, I'm not saying that you didn't try hard, but it's like it felt like it just kind of like fell out of the page, and it just worked so well.
Thank you. I think that, I mean, it's obviously a lot of work, right? The first draft was not like that, but it is also, this was the first book where this is not the first book I've written. It's the first book that I've published. And so it was the first book that I really leaned into the things that I love, the things that I find fascinating and that get me excited. And that happens to be weather and the natural world and magic and romance, all of these things that I love. And I think that became easier to write about because in some sense, like, the magic itself came from the way I view the world. And that makes it easier to write about. For me, anyway.
I know before you joined us on the live here, Clint and Kaylani were both saying that they were getting Addie LaRue vibes from it. And I was like, well, you've got to make sure to tell her that because, I mean, Addie LaRue is epic. And
yeah, I mean, that is
epic.
a huge compliment. I've heard that before, though. Like, I've been tagged in posts on Instagram and stuff where people are saying that it gave them Addie LaRue vibes, which is just an incredible compliment.
Well, as I was reading it, I kept getting like more of the atmospheric vibes of Addie LaRue, but at the same time, Addie and Clara kept reminding me of each other because they both do things that makes it where I want to like smack them in a way where it's like it's so realistic, and I'm just like, why would you do that? Talk. Communication's a thing, woman. But and the fact that they're both strong, powerful, bisexual women, and it's just so ingrained into the story that it's not like a big deal. Because I know, like, in Nature of Witches, there's the moments where Paige is talking with Clara and Song is there too, and he sees it and no one questions anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that there's like no questioning. It's a thing that happens.
Yeah, and that was very intentional. That this is my book and my world, and I wrote it exactly as I wanted the world to be, and so that's why it is never called out specifically, because Clara, it's not about who you love; it's about loving in general, and that is really important to me. So that's why it was written that way.
And I also found it fascinating that when anytime a character is introduced, if you pay attention to how they're acting or how they're voicing their words and things, you can tell before even the story tells you what type of witch they are. You start to understand and who you're looking for. Like with Paige, you can tell Paige is a winter witch, like hardcore. And I just thought that was like really cool. And then like the differences between like Paige and Song, how he's a spring and she's a winter, and like how dramatically different they are personality wise.
And like depending on what you believe in, it kind of reminds me of like astrology signs. Whereas like if you hang around an astrology sign long enough, you're like, yeah, I know what you are. That's how it felt reading the seasons.
Yeah, that was like one of the most fun parts of the writing process for me. Was I carried this notebook around with me to when I was building the magic system, which coincided with building what would the personality of each season look like. If you magnified winter up to 1,000, what would that feel like? What would it look like? What kind of personality traits would winter exhibit if winter were a person? And I just had this notebook around that I carried around with me throughout, because I worked on this book just for myself throughout an entire year, so I got to experience each season and just write things down, and then those became the personality types of each season.
So why Autumn? Why does she stop feeling in Autumn?
I think of Autumn as a very intellectually curious season. I think a lot of us, like myself, I retreat a little bit in Autumn. I become more pensive. I find it to be a more introspective season for me personally, and I always associate Autumn with like going back to school, and so it felt like this time where I would want to be at home reading more and be diving into like intellectual and curiosity pursuits, and so that's why whereas summer I always felt like was this more extroverted season. Depending on where you live, the weather is gorgeous and you want to be outside and you're making more plans, and so that's why it was written that way.
I kind of got the feeling, like as we were going along, that that only love is only for the summer, and letting them go in the autumn. That was more in her head, that it was not necessarily the seasons doing that, but her choosing to do that without realizing she was kind of like already in her head going, okay, this is over then. And just accepting it and letting that happen, and not, it's not actually because of the seasons. And that she kind of learns that with Song, because she starts she realizes she's falling for him in the spring, but it's like, you know, she's been in love with him all along. And even when she breaks up with him and distances herself, doesn't mean she stops loving him. She still loves him. She still loves Paige in her own way. And it has nothing to do with the season.
Yeah, I think Clara, for sure, you know, when we start the book, she really believes this power she has is a curse, and that the way she moves from season to season is a curse, and truly believes she is incapable of loving someone beyond a season, when really it is about finding the right person. And she for sure loves Paige still, obviously, you know, I mean, but Paige and her needed something more, or something, not, I shouldn't say something more, something different than what the other could offer. And that's also okay. That, you know, you can love someone and still not love them exactly as they need to be loved. And that doesn't mean it's not a significant, powerful love.
And to add on to what Mel was saying there, I took it slightly different because I went with the pagan holidays and how autumn is usually the time where you reflect on things and you get ready for the winter season, where winter is like the death and spring is the rebirth. So autumn's always that passive area of you're starting to get ready for the death of the plants, the death of the earth, and then the rebirth in spring. So I went a little bit more with that. So in my head, I thought that's like how her brain kind of took it, as this is where I need to start letting things go because I know they're going to leave in winter.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, being so tied to the seasons, all of the witches, I mean, you know, it really is. Autumn is that introspective time where you're looking at the world around you, knowing everything is about to die. And then, you know, that's why spring is so hopeful, because it's, like you said, the rebirth. It's when everything starts to come back. And so that in this world affects the witches very strongly, because everything that they are is tied to that season.
Especially when Song mentions about the spring witches, when it's killing weeds, like death hurts the spring witches a lot more than it does everyone else.
Yes.
Because of that whole rebirth and everything. So yeah.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I love so much about this book is Clara as a character changes so much from page 1 to the end of the book, and you really see her at the beginning of this book have no faith in who she is as a person alongside who she is as a witch. And I loved the realness that it feels, even though obviously this is a very you know, made up introspective world where they control the weather, but it felt very real as a person, because I feel like a lot of people go through the struggles of, I've hurt people in my life and I don't know how to trust being around the people that I love and how to be who I am without hurting everyone else around me. And I love the ability that Clara has to learn that maybe that's not all that she's worth.
Thank you. I mean, that part of her journey, I mean, that was like a very personal journey for me. I don't feel like I really learned my self-worth until I was like well into adulthood. And so unfortunately for Clara, she got a lot of my own insecurities and fears. And I think that that's why this book, you know, is really special to me, because it was in a lot of ways like my own personal journey to loving myself and accepting myself as I am. I've talked about this a lot, like in you know, on my social media and stuff, but I always, my analogy to that is that I'm an extremely sensitive, emotional person. And I was told my whole life growing up that I was too sensitive. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher pulled me aside and said that I would never make it in the world if I didn't grow a thicker skin. And yes, and I am now 37 and I have not grown a thicker skin and I'm doing all right. And so a lot of my own journey was coming to recognize that sensitivity and being able to relate to people on an emotional level and being deeply emotional are strengths and they're not weaknesses like I allowed myself to believe when I was younger. And that was a big part of my own journey, was being able to accept and love myself for who I am instead of wishing that I was different.
Backtracking a little bit, do you mind if I ask what star sign you are?
I'm a Pisces.
Interesting.
Okay. Makes sense.
So we have some more comments here. Corey says, the undercurrent of the issue of climate and climate change was a great allegory for our current climate crisis. I agree.
Thank you.
Amy says, we noticed some nods to Korean dramas. Was that intentional? Meaning, did you take inspiration from Korean drama elements, or was that a coincidence? For example, the piggyback ride and the confession.
I mean, I noticed that too. So
It was actually a coincidence. I've only seen one K-drama, unfortunately, and it's Goblin, which is like, oh. But I didn't watch Goblin until this book was already written, and then I fell hard, and I still haven't watched the last 2 episodes because I'm afraid to see how it ends. So that's total coincidence, but I definitely now have a list of K-dramas I need to see because I fell so hard for Goblin. So
I know nothing about K-dramas. So.
With Goblin, I think I've only seen 5 episodes, but that was a day a friend of mine was like, you have to watch this. And I'm sitting here at the edge of my seat like, what is this? Why am I in love? And I'm crying. And I'm like, what the hell is going
on? Amy says, hello. Annabelle says, for me, is a beautiful story mixing the issues we are facing due to climate change and the fears, hopes, and dreams of a teenager/adult. I think we are all Clara in some way.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so too.
The thing that I love most were the phrases before starting each chapter that ends up being Clara's book / a letter for future evers. I was actually talking about that earlier, and I said that as I was reading the book and I was hearing these, because I listened to the audiobook because I was stuck in Canada and didn't have my physical book. As I was listening to the book and it was doing these, I was like, I wonder if that's a real book. Is that something that I need to look up? Is that a real book? And then as it went along, I was thinking, Clinton also said that he thought it was a textbook, and I thought that as well. And then I got to thinking, when she got the journal from Alice, I was like, I bet she wrote this. And then when it got to the part where it says, I want to write a book, I was like, I called it. I know this is it. This is it. A Season of Everything for Everything is her book. I just knew it.
That is oh, sorry, go ahead.
I will also piggyback on what she said. The fact that she got the logbook from Mr. Hart is what solidified in her mind on the fact that I need to write something for them, and the letter from Mrs. Hart was the main thing that had me. I lost it when she got that, and the fact that it gave her the mindset of I need to write for future evers.
Yes. Yeah, that was something that came about actually in one of my final revisions, and it really solidified the book for me. I think it was like this piece that felt that it had been missing, because the epigraphs have changed, but in the beginning I had epigraphs, but they were not written from Clara. They were actually written from Alice, who was, the ever before. And so once I knew that she had gotten this logbook, and she starts thinking, no, I need to write about this. I need to, that's kind of when Mrs. Hart gives her that letter is when it really solidified in my mind. So then I rewrote the epigraphs to reflect that they were from Clara. And that is the one thing I get emailed about more than anything else, is that people come to my website and send me an email asking me, a lot of times, they think it might actually be a real book, and they ask, where can I get this? Or is there a version of the book that just has the quotes in it? It's by far the thing I get asked most about is a season for everything.
Honestly, I think that's what solidified my love for this book so much, because I love nothing more than reading a book and seeing little hints being dropped, and then you get to the end and you realize that something that was prevalent at the very beginning of the story, page 1, has now come back to tie into the very end of the book. And it's always like, I mean, I had an inkling that maybe it was her book, but it's just so like satisfying to see something like that big and that important to the character be such a big part of what the book was. I loved it.
I think so too. I love that as a reader as well. And then it's this fun thing where you get to go back and reread them when you know whose voice they're from, and see like her journey has kind of been laid out in her own voice for the entire book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and do that, like reread all of those. But yeah, I'm happy to be back with my actual physical copy that I can do that. Because luckily, I was very thankful that it was available on Scribd, because that was the only place I could find it. And when I was stuck, and I was like, I need to read this book, because we left to go out of town at the end of May, and I was waiting until June to read it, for this, and I was like, I can't read it, and I'm not going to be home in time. And so I was very thankful that it was available on Scribd, and they did an amazing job with the audiobook.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh, good. I've only listened to the first chapter because once it's published, I'm like, I'm going to find a typo or something that's going to annoy me. And so I haven't read it now that it's published, but I did listen to the first chapter, and I loved the narrator. I thought she did an amazing job.
Yes. I don't know if it did it to you, Mel, but the further along you get into the audiobook and it switches to a different chapter, I couldn't fully tell at first. Some of them sound like raindrops, and some of it sounds like fire crackling in the background. And it's like just like the alterations of the seasons and how it just switches, and it's just for that split second.
And
it's like chapter 35 with like the sound behind
that
it.
is so cool. I didn't know it did that.
It's funny because it's super, super quiet, especially towards the beginning. And for a while I was like, I thought maybe it was the audiobook, like the person recording the audiobook, like actually like clicking pause and like starting or something, and it was just like the breaks of it. But then it got to this one, and it was like right before this big storm, and it made the sound of and I was just like, what is that? That was the only time I was loud. I was just like, oh my gosh, what is that?
I had no idea it does that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was listening to the audiobook yesterday at work, and when it did that, I was like, are my headphones screwing up? Because I know I'm hearing something. And then it got to another chapter, and I was like, it did it again. It did it again. And then they started getting louder, and I'm like, oh, I see what's happening here. Love this.
Yeah, and with the big storm, that was the loudest one.
Yes.
You will see it once you watch more K-dramas. When Claire's mentor/friend died in the beginning of the book, I felt devastated. Yes.
We literally got like 3 or 4 lines from him, and I'm like, how could you do this to me?
I gasped so loud at work while doing, I don't even remember what I was doing on the computer, but I gasped so loud and just started bawling that my coworker looked her head over the thing, and she's like, who died? I was like, Mr. Hart. And she's like, who's Mr. Hart? A book character. She's like, oh God, and just went back to what she was doing.
I was devastated writing it, if that makes you feel any better. It was so funny because I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be this huge impactful thing for readers, because you don't see him for a lot, because it happened so early on. And actually, someone made fan art of Clara and Mr. Hart, and I lost it when I saw it. I was like, oh my God. It was this beautiful, beautiful artwork of them sitting back to back in the field. And
I can't imagine like how fun and cool that is to like write a book and then have people create art and different things like that for it.
It is amazing. I mean, the whole thing has just been a total dream come true. I think like, you know, you write these things and you wonder, is the book going to find its readers? Is it going to find people that resonate with it? Or, you know, am I the only one who needed this book? And it is an amazing, amazing joy to see it go out in the world and resonate with other people so much that they want to talk about it and post about it and make art about it. The whole thing has been just like a dream of an experience.
And what about
Clint has some art?
Oh yeah, your little. It came with the pre-order, right, Clint?
Mm-hmm. It came with a bunch of stickers and stuff too. I just couldn't figure out where I put those. I think those are somewhere on my altar. I can't find the herbs and the plants. Stickers.
But yeah, that's the art print. That's done by E.K. Belcher, who's just so talented and amazing. And that's one of my favorite scenes in the book. So I had to have it illustrated. And she's doing the artwork for the pre-order campaign for my next book too. So it'll be a fun, like similar style.
Speaking of the pre-order campaign for your next book, why don't you share with everybody what you were...
Oh yeah,
what you did with the pre-order for this book, because I think a lot of people didn't know what you did for this book.
Yeah,
and then what you're doing for the next one.
An arc to show you of the next one. Okay, here is the next book. This is called Wild as the Witch.
I love that.
And this one comes out on August 2nd, which is suddenly feeling very, very soon. And so for the pre-order campaign for Nature, I really wanted to do something that felt special to me. And so I thought, well, what if I could do something like giving back to the earth as part of the pre-order campaign? And I had this idea, like, what if I could plant a tree for every pre-order? And so I found One Tree Planted, which is a nonprofit organization that does just that. And so I was able to partner with them, and every pre-order of The Nature of Witches resulted in a tree being planted. And it was what was so special about it for me was I cried when I found One Tree Planted and we did this partnership. I was so excited to be able to launch the book this way. I didn't realize it was going to resonate with people the way that it did. And that was so, so special to me. People got behind this pre-order campaign in a way that I could never have dreamed of. And we ended up planting over 2,200 trees, which was just
That's amazing.
Amazing. So I wanted to do something really special for Wild. And this book, there's an owl in the book that is a huge part of the book. The owl pretty much drives the plot of the book. And it's very present throughout the book. And the owl is a northern spotted owl, which is an owl native to the Pacific Northwest, and is a threatened species due to deforestation primarily. And so it's a very, there aren't a lot of these owls left. And I found a nonprofit in the Bay Area in California that actually has a northern spotted owl named Sequoia living with them full time. She fell from a nest at a very young age and can no longer fly silently. She injured the ligament in her wing, and you have to be able to fly silently to catch prey in their habitats. And so she wouldn't survive in the wild. And so she now lives at this nonprofit as a wildlife ambassador. And Sequoia is expensive to care for. You know, her food is $500 a year just alone, not counting vaccinations and veterinary care and her habitat maintenance and things like that. And so I partnered with Wild Care for the pre-order campaign for Wild as a Witch, and every pre-order will go towards sponsoring Sequoia the owl. So my hope is that we can cover her care for, months. And so I'll pull up a picture. I'm not sure if this will show very well because it'll just be on my screen, but this is Sequoia. And if you go to my Instagram page, you can see more of her, but she's 17 years old, and I got to meet her in person, which was like me sobbing, meeting this owl, and Sequoia being like, I could not care less about you, which is fun. This owl just looking at me where I am losing my mind, because almost all of the research I did for my next book was about this owl. And I never thought I'd get to see one in person because they are so rare. And so it was just a very, very magical and moving experience for me. So I'm really excited to be able to launch Wild into the world in that way.
That's really awesome. Actually, when we took an Alaskan cruise, that was part of our trip, and one of the excursions that we did was actually to this raptor rehabilitation center, and we got to see some of the owls and bald eagles that they care for. And so I'm like, I have an owl too.
That's so cool. I love owls. They're just such majestic
They
creatures.
really are.
Owl is my second. I have a big owl tattoo on my back, and it's my second tattoo, and I absolutely love it. And so every time I see an owl or hear about owls, I'm like, oh my gosh!
Oh, that's so cool. So beautiful.
It's Hedwig.
And somehow I did not get any pictures on my phone of the bald eagles, but I have that on my camera or on my computer.
Now that we're talking about your second book, I know we'll go back to this one in just a bit, but did you feel that now that your first book has been published, did you feel your writing experience for the second book was different or harder, or what did you feel maybe the emotions that kind of came with writing something different?
It was way harder. Significantly harder. A lot of authors talk about like book 2 syndrome, and that was entirely true for me. Like, truth be told, it wasn't super fun for me. When you're writing before you're published, you're not on contract, right? So you don't have a deadline unless you self-impose one. And so I spent literally years with The Nature of Witches before it was published. But The Nature of Witches was acquired in a 2-book deal. And I didn't know what my second book was going to be.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to come up with a concept, draft it, and revise it in a very short period of time compared to how long I was able to spend with nature. And that messed with me a lot. I kept thinking, well, if I can't spend years on this book, is it going to be a book worth reading? It mentally, I had a really hard time being like, is this a timeline that I can actually produce a good novel in? And my team was great and very supportive, and it ended up being great in the end, and I'm really proud of the book now, but it was definitely something I had to get used to, and a learning process to be creating under a deadline and under time pressure. And so it was a totally different experience than writing the first book. I actually think it's one of the best experiences, though, I've had just for my own craft, because we talk a lot about inspiration and feeling inspired when you're doing creative pursuits. But I think it's really important to recognize that, like, a lot of us do not feel inspired a lot when we're creating. A lot of creating is just sitting down and doing the work, even on the days when you don't feel inspired to do it. And most of my second book was sitting down and doing it because I had to do it and not being sure if the magic of the story was coming together. And in the end, now reading it back, I really love this book. I'm so proud of it. I'm thrilled it's going to be out in the world, but I couldn't see that at the time when I was working on it. And so it was a really good lesson to me to trust my craft and my storytelling and be like, okay, I can still write a book that I love, even when I'm not loving it in all of the moments I'm working on it.
I think that's also like a really powerful message, because I know that a lot of our viewers that watch our channels, and even all three of us, have all at some point thought about or started or, you know, put the work in to try to write something. And it's like, you never know if you're good at it, or if it's going to pan out, or if it'll be good. But to know, like, authors that are successful still struggle, not that I want you to struggle, but you still struggle with trying to make things feel like it's going to be worth your while, is like,
yes,
refreshing.
And from what I understand from my friends who have published many more books than I have, that does not go away, unfortunately. It just stays with you, and you learn to work with that discomfort.
Yeah.
Interesting. We have a lot more comments here, so let me see. I too listened to the audio this time. Mr. Hart's death was crushing. I was devastated. I shed a tear or two. I need to listen to the audiobook. Mr. Hart was very impactful to Clara and us. He's all about believing and having faith in oneself and others.
I also do want to commend you on being able to write a character with so few lines that ends up getting killed off, but still having such an important impact on the entire story as a whole. That takes a lot to be able to do that.
Yeah, because he did keep impacting the whole story throughout the entire thing, even though he was just this very small character.
And it's, you know, he was everything to Clara. I mean, the only person really at that point in her life that believed in her and was patient with her and saw her as a whole person for exactly who she was, instead of for this power that she has. And his death is really what propels her to be like, you know, he believed that I was capable and that I could do great things, and I owe it to him to do that. That belief took root deep inside of her, and we all need someone like that. I hope that we all have someone like that who believes in us in that kind of a way.
I think that was in reference to the owl.
Yes.
Sequoia. Absolutely love how you're using your voice and influence to bring awareness to these natural and environmental issues. I think that's really cool.
Thank you. It's a huge privilege to be able to write about the things that I love and the things that I care about, and have a team that is so strongly behind me on those things.
And Tori says, I just went to Audible and pre-ordered the second book.
Oh, thank you.
So I pre-ordered it, but I didn't actually like read the synopsis or anything. I just ordered it. And does this follow Clara or Claire?
No, they're both standalones. Okay. So it's similar in that this is also a contemporary fantasy. It is set in our world. And it's very witchy. But it is totally different characters, different magic. And it is set in the Pacific Northwest. I can give you the quick rundown of it if you'd like.
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it is set in the Pacific Northwest, and it follows Iris Gray, who is a witch and hides her identity because she had a very traumatic experience in her past about when people learned about her magic and things like that. So she runs a wildlife refuge in the Pacific Northwest with her mother, which would be the perfect job for her if not for Pike Alder, who is an intern working with them, who absolutely hates witches. And Iris decides the only reasonable course of action is to curse him, and never means for the curse to get out. But before she's able to dispel this particularly cruel curse she writes for him, an owl swoops down from the trees, steals the curse, and flies off into the wilderness with it. And so the curse is bound to the life of the owl. And if something happens to the owl, this curse will be unleashed on not only Pike, but on the entire region. And so Iris is forced to trek through the wilderness with this boy she can't stand in search of this owl.
I'm
I
glad
like
I pre-ordered it because I'm sold. Absolutely sold.
I'm glad I did too.
Thank you so much. It is a really, this one I just leaned into like all of these tropes that I love. It's set in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I live, and to have, you know, if the nature of witches is a love letter to the earth, then this one's a love letter to the Pacific Northwest. It's set in those like, you know, moody trees and lots of fog and rain, and it was a joy to be able to write about this place that I love so much. So I can't believe it's now almost it'll be out in almost 6 weeks, which is feeling so soon. I can't believe it.
I love the name Iris Gray, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Which made me think of another question. And it refers, I guess, to that name as well as song. How did you come up with your names for your characters?
So a lot of times they just come to me, like Clara just came to me. And a lot of times I think about names that I want to invoke like a certain or evoke a certain tone, which is where Iris Gray came in. It just felt, you know, the atmosphere and tone of my books is something that I put a lot of thought into. And so I want the name to kind of fit with the rest of the mood of the book. That's how Iris Gray came along. And then Pike, his name is, you know, the big market in Seattle is Pike Place Market. And Pike, you know, this isn't on the page, but in my mind, the backstory was that's where his parents met. And so they named him Pike. And so it's this nod to Seattle. And in terms of saying, I was looking up names and I wanted something that felt very calming and gentle. And that's that name. I just think is an absolutely beautiful name that evokes everything that he is. And so it just, as soon as I came across it, it was the perfect name.
And you said sang. I know the audiobook says song, so it's sang.
The audiobook says song?
It does.
Yeah, it says song.
Oh no, it's supposed to be sang.
Good to know.
It's spelled S-A-N-G.
It is.
Yeah, I thought that when I was physically reading it earlier. I was like, it's pronounced song, but it's spelled like sang. But okay.
No, it's pronounced sang.
Oh wow!
Like I said, I only listened to the first chapter of the audiobook, so
He's not in the first chapters.
That's funny. Wow. Okay. Because like I said, I listened to the whole thing because I didn't have my book with me, so I thought his name was Song, like SONG.
Yeah. No, I didn't know I did that.
Also, with the next book, do we know if we're gonna get something similar or as pretty?
Yes, I can show you the design if you'd like to see it.
Yes.
It is going to be gorgeous.
We are like so pumped right now.
Yes, we're all like, let me see.
Oh
Ooh.
my gosh,
that is stunning.
Oh, they're gonna look so good together.
I love
gorgeous.
I love when
so here's
publishers do
more
that.
of a close up of it.
Oh, that is so pretty.
I'm obsessed.
Like pinks and purples and greens. Love it.
Oh, I'm in love.
And then I'll show you the art print too, just because I have it here. But this is the art print of Iris and Pike out in the, and it's hard to see because it's set at night. But up on this corner, there's the
owl.
spotted owl, and just a really beautiful artwork. So
those are going to be.
I like it.
And the case is only on the first print run. So
pre-orders.
Like the case, the pre-order is the best way to get it.
But also pre-order it so that we can help save a spotted owl.
Yes, absolutely. That is so cool.
It's they just give me the prettiest books. I feel so lucky.
Mine is seeing Mr. Hart, Claire's teacher, annoyed the hell out of me. Oh, I think maybe not Mr. Hart.
Oh yeah, Miss
Other
Sundial.
teacher.
Or no, who's wow, I'm forgetting his name.
Is that Mr. Burrows?
Yeah,
Or
Mr.
Barrows?
Burrows. Isn't that funny? I'm like, gosh, what was his name?
Yeah.
That's
Burrows.
because his character was not very great.
He was not great.
But he's also a Winter. I kind of took it as he's a little bit abrasive because a lot of
cold,
Winter
yeah.
personality are abrasive.
And I do think, like, you know, even he, I don't, you know, he's meant to not be very likable, but I do, like, he believes in what he is doing so strongly that he's like, but the ends justify the means. If I have to make you uncomfortable and put you in situations that are pushing you too far, like, that's a small price to pay to get you to come into your magic in the way that we need you to. And I find it really interesting thinking about, you know, when it's like he is devastated by what's happening to the world and knows that she is supposed to have a magic that can help. And from his point of view, he's like, I'm kind of willing to do anything to get this magic to come to the surface so it can help. And, you know, he takes certain liberties in trying to get her there, but, you know, from his point of view, he's like, it's worth it.
I love when she punches him.
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
That was awesome.
I may hate Mr. Burrows a lot, but I also appreciate him in the story because I don't think she would have gotten to the point she did without him as an obstacle, because she needed that obstacle of somebody to hate. She needed that full-on hatred for her to see that it's okay to have those in her lives that love her.
Yeah, she absolutely needed that.
Yes.
Did you find that writing the scene, the off-site testing scene with the mom and the two kids, did you find that was hard to write? Because I know for me, reading it a second time even, it was hard to read.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because it's traumatic for everyone involved. You know, it's very hard for Clara, and it's also really hard on this family that's there. And that is a big moment in the book because, you know, when she's in, you know, when Sang picks her up and they're leaving, she's like, Mr. Burrows was right. Like, he put me in this situation and I like used more magic than I ever have before. And, you know, it was a really hard scene for me to write because I wanted it is so impactful for her. And you know, you want that to translate onto the page. Like, and so I worked on that scene a lot.
Let's see. Mr. Rorasori says, so excited. Corey says, off to pre-order.
Thank you.
The punch was epic. Yes, I felt that punch. I think everybody felt that punch. All the characters in the book.
I mean, Paige it helped her and Paige somewhat get back on a better tone to lead up to, even though of her almost hurting Paige, but that's totally a different thing. But it almost fixed their relationship of her seeing her she's like, oh, you actually stood up for yourself and punched someone. You're coming into your own. Brava.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I think that was a big frustration on Paige. I mean, Paige is really frustrated and angry at Clara when the book starts. And she's like, I need you to start taking ownership over who you are and this power that you have and stop feeling sorry for yourself and like grow into who you are. And I think she sees Clara punch a teacher, which she would never have done in the past, and is like, okay, you're working on it. That's good.
And I also appreciate the okay, my mind is going blank. The female teacher's name. But I appreciate how she how she changed throughout as well, where before she was just kind of like, she was cold, she was distant, she was this child needs to just be put away in this little corner over here to, okay, we need you, but I still think you suck. You know what? He was wrong for putting you in that situation. You did an amazing job. And kind of like respecting her as a person and thinking, okay, you know what? You need a break. You take a break. You do what you need to do. and you made the right choice of backing away. And I liked how she changed as well.
But in my head, when it comes to Mrs. Suntile, it was more of Clara put her in that box. Clara was like, gave her the permission to, oh, I'm just going to lock you away, put you away because I'm dangerous. And the more Clara started opening up herself, Miss Suntile was like, okay, now we can actually be what we were supposed to be originally.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clara didn't stand up for herself. She never fought against it. Clara believed that she was dangerous and needed to be put away. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that when she, you know, I think in the beginning, Miss Suntile is frustrated with her, and she is like, we need you to start progressing here. And she's, you know, frustrated with Mr. Hart. She thinks that things are moving too slowly. And I think that as she sees Clara start to blossom, she does kind of realize, okay, I've also been she hasn't been nurturing. You know, and I think she started to see, okay, like Mr. Burroughs is the extreme of what Miss Suntile would do. And I think that she starts to adjust and come more to the center to be like, okay, I need to nurture her also a little bit. And people need to hear that you're proud of them and that you see that they're trying. And I think Miss Suntile was just like, I need to see that you're trying. And once she saw that, they were able to form a better relationship and understand each other better.
The whole thought of Clary even thinking about committing likely suicide, even if it was just with her magic getting rid of it, hurt me to think that she was that mentally hurt.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, she does not like herself in the beginning of the book, and it's a really hard place to be in. I mean, you know, and to open a book too, to write in that headspace where it's devastating because, you know, I love this character but you know, that's, I think too, what makes the book, and for me, having like written it, made it so satisfying was like this, you can rewrite the narrative of yourself. You can take ownership of who you are and disregard the voices that other people have put in your mind and decide to rewrite those things. And you can learn to love yourself and learn to love those things that maybe other people have told you aren't lovable.
Yes, that's what I thought about Clara and Miss Suntile and Tori Same.
I think
go ahead.
Question I had, sorry. The question that I had for me all the way till the end of the book was the ending with, I believe it's an eclipse. Was that something that you knew once you were done, like once you got into the point that you knew it was going to be witchy and you kind of knew where the story was going, did you know that that's how you wanted it to end?
No, the eclipse was not part of the first many drafts of this book. And so there was a total solar eclipse that cut through the Pacific Northwest in 2017 when I was working on a subsequent draft of this book. And my husband is a pilot, not for work, but for fun. And so we got a little plane and flew down to Oregon where the total eclipse was happening. And we watched it from 17,000 feet in the air. And it was a magical, I've never experienced anything like it. I mean, it was wild, and it was so cool because once, you know, the sun produces so much heat and light, even when it's almost totally blocked. But once you got into the path of where it was completely blocked, the plane got very cold. Everything was dark. I mean, the whole world just changed in an instant. And it was this incredible experience. And I got home and was like, I have to write an eclipse into this book. And it ended up working so well because the witches get their magic from the sun. And so what would an experience be like for someone who has that kind of a connection to our brightest star and then loses it? And it just fit into the story so well that I ended up rewriting a lot of the book to right toward an eclipse.
I really enjoyed that whole scene of essentially the death and rebirth of her magic in the eclipse and what happened with her eyes.
Yeah. I wanted her to come out of it with something, and I always thought that they're, they have this magic that connects them to the sun, but in that moment the magic is gone, and then she's kind of a human looking at the sun, and that's not good for your eyes. And so, but it was one of my absolute favorite scenes to write.
I thought she was going to come out blind.
Oh.
That she was going to have her magic reset, but she'd be blind.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he was like, "Can you see me?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Yes, I see you. And he was like, "Your eyes are different." I was thinking, okay, they're like whited out or something because of staring at the sun.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool that they're like gold.
Yeah, I thought that was like a unique twist because you would think they would go completely white. With like most people would automatically think white, but for you to take it gold like the sun, it's like she is the sun for all the other witches.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, I don't know if this was intentional, but I feel like there was a comparison because at the beginning of the book, she's looking at Sang's eyes and she mentions that she sees gold in his. Was that an intentional comparison?
It actually wasn't, but I love that you noticed that. It makes me, no, that line was one of that line has been with this book from the very first draft when she says, when she notices the gold in his eyes, and if I were the sun, I would live in his eyes too. That's been in the book. That's like one of the only lines that has survived every draft. And so I kind of love the comparison, but no, that was not intentional.
Well, then even better.
Yes.
That's cool. I didn't even put that together. Let's see. I loved how she finally accepted herself and her magic and asked for the sun to give it back, and she would give it more respect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Clara needed to lose it to know she didn't know that she loved it. She, and I think that losing it in that moment and feeling the effects of what that does to her, she's no longer herself. And so I wanted her to end the book absolutely loving this magic and respecting it.
All I could think about was Selena Gomez's song in my head when you said that. Lose you to love me. I'm like, oh.
Yes, I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh, I love that song so much.
Amy here says, I also thought she was going to be blind after that too.
I also appreciated the fact that you also tied it back into the lightning towards the end because of the fact of you've got Paige got shot with the lightning earlier on, and then Sang got hit with lightning, but he got hit with a lot more lightning than Paige did.
Mm-hmm.
Paige just had like a little marks around her neck, but in him to say the thunder always follows the lightning, I was just like, that's why I was coming back crying, was because of that line in particular, and I was just like, oh.
He's so good. I just love him so much.
He is.
It's weird to think of him as Sang now.
I know. Me trying to say Sang.
I'm going to look it up after the show. I didn't know that it was pronounced that way in the audiobook.
That's so funny. I thought that her eyes will change with the seasons since the transition was in autumn. That's why they were gold.
Interesting.
Oh,
that's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
That would have been cool.
I thought, that's why they were gold as the leaves, but no. Okay. I loved her relationship with Sang, the love language of flowers used between Clara and him. Yes, that whole conversation with the flowers was so cute.
I get a lot of comments on Instagram about their field.
Who needs a text conversation when you can have it with flowers?
Yeah.
But it was beautiful, but it was also heartbreaking to see that they were in so much pain. Mm-hmm. But to be able to translate that through nature, like, it's just so cool. Like, the entire concept of this book was just unbelievably cool.
Thank you.
Well, with the pain and doing the flowers, it showed the beauty within that pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I loved about it was, yes, it was showing the full unadulterated pain of them, but at the same time, it was showing that there is beauty within that. Because it all ties back to, that weird orange flower at the first dance, where if you dip it in like the water and the lemon or something, and the thorns are softer to touch.
Yeah, the sleeping orange. I also get a lot of questions about that if that's a real flower, and it's not. But, yeah.
Sang was my favorite character. I need to know more Sangs. Don't we all?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel that we do as well.
So I kind of picture Sang as of Asian descent because of the name, I guess.
Yep.
He is, right?
Was that
He is.
He
Yeah,
is?
he's Korean.
Okay.
Doesn't it mention that he's... Yeah.
COVID brain, okay. COVID brain makes you forget like everything. That's why I'm like, I can't remember names. Or
I know we usually have some typical questions that we ask all of our authors that we have on here, that we always find these questions are some of our most fascinating answers and stuff like that. Our main one that we always ask is, while you're writing, do you ever have something that is on your desk or near you that you always have to have with you? Like, I know Janelle stated that she had like a little red bird that was always on her desk.
I do. I have several. So these are rocks I got when I was in Ireland on a writing retreat at a writing workshop a long time ago. And I picked them up off a beach, and I was on submission with this book. I didn't know if it was going to sell. And the journey to publication for me was extremely long. And I picked these up on this retreat where I was feeling inspired, and I keep them on my desk always. I also have, this is a marble replica of the sun.
Wow.
And it sits on a base that lights it up. And so
that's very cool.
That. And then my last one is this little owl that my sister got for me while I was working on my next book.
That's so cute. That's very cool. Okay, another one of our questions is, do you snack when you write? And if you do, like, what is it you snack on or drink on when you're writing?
No, I absolutely do not snack when I write. I've never been like, if I'm going to snack, I'm going to put all of my attention toward the snacking. I've never been able to and I also don't want to snack and then be using my keyboard. So, no, I don't snack when I write, but I always have a beverage, and I start the day every morning with an Americano. That's what this is. I'll have a second one if I'm feeling the need, and then I switch to afternoon tea. So I'm drinking coffee and tea pretty much all day long. And then in the evening, when I sit down to read, I drink a decaf tea. So I'm literally drinking coffee or tea all day long.
And then I feel like one other question that we ask all the time is, what are you reading right now? And any recommendations of books that you think that everybody should read?
Yes. So right now I'm reading Once There Were Wolves. It is an adult by, let's see, what is her name? I don't have the book with me right now. Carolyn McConnell.
Oh, yes.
I don't have the book with me right now, but it's called Once There Were Wolves. It is fantastic. It's an adult. It definitely has heavy topics in it. So look it up and see, but it is super atmospheric. It's about this girl that is this woman that's rewilding wolves in the Highlands of Scotland to help fight against climate change and build up forests there. And so if you like naturalist atmospheric writing, the book is fantastic. I haven't finished it yet, but
if it's for adults, gotcha. And wolves. Sold.
Yeah, lots of wolves. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Like I said, some heavier topics. So look it up and make sure that it's something that you'd want to read. But it is fantastic. And then
we like heavy topics here too.
And then I just finished, this one doesn't come out until next year, unfortunately. It's called Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. It is fantastic. It's a World War I inspired setting about a girl who goes to the front lines of this war between gods, and there's mythical creatures and an epic romance. And it was just fantastic, and I absolutely loved it. So highly recommend that one as well.
You said it's by Rebecca Ross?
Yes, and comes out next year.
Have to pre-order.
It's only going to be on my anticipated releases for next year.
Yes.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And she's, I think, doing a cover reveal next week, and I can't wait to see what the cover looks like.
That's
I'll
exciting.
have to see if that's already on Sterling's list, because I know he has a list of pre-orders of 90 books for next year.
Oh,
Rebecca Ross
wow.
was the one that wrote An Enchanted River, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the people viewing or from either of you?
What is your favorite type of genre to read?
That is so tough for me. I truly do love everything. And when I'm writing or when I'm working on a project, I don't read anything similar. And so I tend to actually read a lot of nonfiction when I'm working like on edits or drafting. And then when I'm in between projects or doing more like promo or things like that, like past pages or things where I'm not actively writing, then I'll read more in my genre, contemporary fantasy, things like that. But I truly do love everything. I read a lot of adult and I read a lot of young adult.
Are you currently working on anything?
Yes, I am. It is my to date favorite thing I've ever written. And I really love it, and I'm hoping I can talk about it soon.
That's exciting.
Very exciting. I know you can't say too much, but how far out are you thinking that book will be?
I am thinking that I will have a book out next year.
That's exciting.
All right.
Maybe.
All right.
I'm not really. Maybe. I think so. I think that would be a good bet. Yeah.
Well, we will keep our eyes open for it then.
Yes.
Peeled.
Absolutely.
I know you can't tell us much about it, but will it involve witches again? Okay.
Yes.
Exciting.
I like writing about the natural world, and I think that the voices for the natural world for me have always been witches. And so, maybe for me that will change, but the two books I have right now, well, there's one book I'm actively working on and one I'm thinking a lot about, and both of them involve witches, one in a very big way and one in more of a background way. But for now, I like magic and I like nature. And so for me, that means witches.
I think it's so funny and interesting that this started out not having any witches at all, and now all your books are witches.
Yeah, I think I found myself in what the kind of stories I want to tell while I was writing nature.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Well, I want to say thank you again so much for joining us. It's been such an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to reading Wild is the Witch. I'm excited to see that beautiful cover in my hands. And
I am too. I haven't seen it in person. I actually think they're being delivered soon, so I will get to see it soon, and I can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait either.
Yeah, we always feel so honored and blessed to have wonderful authors like you that are willing to sit down and join us for something like this. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This was such a fun way to spend a Saturday morning for me. Thank you so much for inviting me and for loving my book. Like this sort of thing is really, really special for me. So thank you so much for inviting me and having me on here. It means a lot.
I actually was creating, like setting up the live show and creating the thumbnail and everything while sitting in the airport trying to fly home. And I was just like, I really, really hope I make it home in time for this.
Well, I'm so glad you did.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
Because otherwise, yeah. I don't know how I would do if I was still stuck in Canada.
Would have been a hot mess.
I'm already a hot mess, but you know, it's been an amazing time reading your book and chatting with you. And I know that everybody that has read it has absolutely loved it and have nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah, I've heard no bad review. I've
Not a
heard
single
nothing
no.
bad yet.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And that's amazing for a debut author too.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that you are our first debut author that we've had. I do believe. Yeah.
No, we had Janella Angeles. She was also a debut.
Oh yeah, Janella was.
Yeah, we've been very, very lucky with having lots of amazing authors join us for these readathons, and we actually already have our next one lined up.
Oh, that's so great.
Yes, I got confirmation.
Which is going to be a lot of firsts for us, and it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and we can't tell anything.
We're keeping it secret.
Yes, but thank you again, and I know normally for everybody that's watching, we usually would have our author chat followed by our after hours live show later this evening, but because of the way we're doing the readathon, our after hours will be on July 1st. So make sure to come back and join us for that, for some hijinks that will be involved.
I'm involved. Of course, there's hijinks.
And I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, Rachel. And thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and to everyone who watched. This was a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
And for those that are not already subscribed, make sure to click that subscribe button down below and go and subscribe to Kaylani and to Clint. Their channels are linked down in the description. And go pre-order Rachel's book so you can help save an owl and also have an amazing book. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a big thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button down below. And until next time, remember to always be completely you. Bye.
Bye.
In broadcast.